I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The restaurant was the kind where silence had texture, where conversations never rose above a murmur and the soft clink of silver against fine china punctuated the ambient piano music. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in pristine white linen, and waiters moved with practiced efficiency, appearing only when needed. At 65, I had just sold Seaside Retreats, my chain of luxury boutique hotels, for $47 million. It was the culmination of decades of hard work, sleepless nights, and relentless determination. What had begun as a small beachside inn after my husband Gregory's death had grown into one of the most respected hotel chains on the East Coast. I smoothed the napkin on my lap, trying to calm my nerves. This dinner was supposed to be a celebration, but I felt a strange uneasiness I couldn't quite place. Across from me sat my daughter Lauren, now 38, elegant in a black designer dress I'd given her for her last birthday. Her husband, Justin Clark, 40, sat beside her, immaculate in his tailored suit, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "To your incredible success, Mom." Lauren raised her champagne glass, the diamonds on her wrist catching the light as she did. $47 million. I still can't believe it. I smiled, clinking my glass of cranberry juice against hers. "Thank you, dear. My cardiologist had been firm. No alcohol with my heart condition and blood pressure medication." I took a small sip, savoring the tart flavor. "You've worked so hard for this, Nancy," Justin chimed in, his voice smooth as polished marble. "Now you can finally relax, travel, enjoy your life." There was something in his tone that bothered me, as if my life until now had been merely a prelude, as if I hadn't enjoyed building something from nothing, as if my work had no intrinsic value beyond its monetary outcome. "Actually, I have plans," I replied, setting my glass down. "The Gregory Davis Foundation is just the beginning." I saw Lauren and Justin exchange a quick glance. "Foundation?" Lauren's voice had an edge to it now. "What foundation?" "I'm establishing a foundation in your father's name," I explained, warming to the topic. "For orphaned children. I'm allocating $30 million to start." Justin's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. $30 million? He set the glass down with deliberate care. "That's quite generous, Nancy." "These children need more than just shelter," I continued, not missing the tightening around Lauren's eyes. "They need opportunities, education, a chance at life. Your father always wanted to help children who lost their parents young." Lauren's smile had vanished completely now. "But Mom, that's most of the money from the sale. What about, have you thought about your future, your security?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Rebecca Foster, my attorney and friend of 30 years. "I need to take this," I said, rising. "It's about the final details of the sale." I walked to the restaurant's quiet lobby, where the signal was stronger. "Rebecca," perfect timing. "Just checking if you told them about the foundation," she said without preamble. Rebecca had always been direct. It's why I trusted her with both my legal affairs and my friendship. "Just did. They're not taking it well." Rebecca sighed. "I warned you, Nancy. They've been spending money like water for years. Did you see Lauren's new car? The vacation house? They're drowning in debt." "You don't know that for certain," I protested, though the seed of doubt had been growing in my mind for months. "I hope I'm wrong," Rebecca replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Call me after dinner." When I returned to the table, Lauren and Justin were huddled in urgent conversation that stopped abruptly as I approached. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling back into my chair. "Of course, Mom." Lauren smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just discussing how proud we are of you." I reached for my cranberry juice and was about to take a sip when something caught my eye. A slight cloudy residue at the bottom of the glass that hadn't been there before. I paused, studying it. "Something wrong with your drink?" Justin asked, his tone casual, but his eyes watchful. "It tastes a bit too sweet," I lied, placing the glass back on the table untouched. "I think I'll order a fresh one." I signaled the waiter, a young black man with intelligent eyes who introduced himself as Marcus Johnson. I requested a new cranberry juice and watched as he removed the suspicious glass. The remainder of dinner passed in strained conversation. Lauren asked pointed questions about the foundation, how much control I would maintain, what the tax implications were, if I had considered other options for the money. Justin kept checking his watch, his earlier charm giving way to poorly concealed impatience. When we finally said our goodbyes on the sidewalk, Lauren hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom," she whispered, and for a moment I almost believed her. I watched their sleek black Mercedes disappear around the corner before getting into my own more modest sedan. My hands were trembling slightly as I gripped the steering wheel, though I wasn't sure if it was from anger, fear, or simply disbelief at what I was beginning to suspect. A light tap on my window startled me. It was Marcus, the waiter, standing beside my car with a concerned expression. I rolled down the window. "Mrs. Davis?" His voice was low, glancing around as if to ensure no one else could hear. "I'm sorry to approach you like this, but there's something you need to know." My heart began to pound. "What is it, Marcus?" He hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "When you stepped out to take that phone call, I saw something." He paused, swallowing hard. "I was serving the next table and had a clear view. Your daughter put something in your drink, a white powder from a small vial she took from her purse. Her husband was watching the room, like he was making sure no one noticed." Though I had already suspected something was wrong with my drink, hearing the confirmation sent ice through my veins. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Marcus nodded firmly. "Yes, ma'am. I've been working in restaurants for 6 years while putting myself through graduate school in criminology. I notice details. It's what I'm trained to do. I couldn't just say nothing." "And did you tell anyone else?" "No, ma'am. I came straight to you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sealed plastic bag containing my juice glass. "I saved this instead of clearing it away. If you want to have it tested, well, the evidence is here." I stared at the bag, speechless. This young man, a stranger, had just potentially saved my life. "Why?" I finally managed. "Why would you do this for someone you don't know?" A shadow crossed his face. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died. 2 years ago, my uncle tried something similar to get her house. Some people see the elderly as obstacles to what they want." His gaze met mine directly. "But I see a person who deserves respect and protection." I took the bag with trembling hands. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to, Mrs. Davis. Just be careful. People who do these kinds of things are dangerous." With one last concerned look, he turned and walked back toward the restaurant. I sat in my car for several minutes, clutching the plastic bag, feeling as if the world had collapsed around me. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of cold, crystallizing fury, the kind that turns grief into purpose and betrayal into resolve. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and called Rebecca. "You were right," I said when she answered. There was no need to elaborate. A long silence followed. When Rebecca finally spoke, her voice was steady but grim. "How bad?" "The worst. She tried to poison me, Rebecca. I have the evidence." Another pause. "Come to my office. Now." Rebecca's downtown office was quiet at this late hour, most of the staff having gone home long ago. Her corner office, with its panoramic view of the city skyline, was illuminated only by her desk lamp, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. I placed the plastic bag containing the glass on her desk. Rebecca stared at it, her face expressionless except for a slight tightening around her mouth. At 64, with her silver-streaked dark hair and sharp eyes behind black-rimmed glasses, she had the demeanor of someone who had seen the worst of human nature and had long ceased to be surprised by it. "Tell me everything," she said, leaning back in her leather chair. I recounted the evening's events, the dinner, the phone call, the suspicious residue in my drink, and Marcus's intervention. As I spoke, Rebecca took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly listening with the focused attention that had made her one of Boston's most formidable attorneys. When I finished, she set her pen down and looked at me directly. "We need to get this tested immediately. I know a lab that can do it discreetly." She checked her watch. "It's late, but I can call in a favor." "Do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. While Rebecca made the call, I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. How had it come to this? My own daughter, the little girl I had raised alone after Gregory's sudden heart attack, had taken him when she was just 12. The child I had sacrificed everything for, working 16-hour days to build a business that would secure our future. "The lab technician will meet us in 30 minutes, Rebecca announced, hanging up. "While we wait, there's something else you should see." She unlocked a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder, sliding it across the desk to me. "What is this?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Financial investigation of Lauren and Justin. I commissioned it 3 months ago when they started showing unusual interest in the hotel sale." I opened the folder and began reading. With each page, a bleaker picture emerged. Lauren and Justin were not just in debt, they were financially ruined. Maxed out credit cards, loans from loan sharks, their luxury apartment mortgaged to the hilt and facing foreclosure, leases on cars they couldn't afford, designer clothes, extravagant vacations, a lifestyle of conspicuous consumption built entirely on quicksand. "They're 2 months away from bankruptcy," I said, closing the folder. Rebecca nodded. "And when you mentioned putting most of your money into a foundation, it was the trigger," I finished. "They realized they were about to lose their only chance to solve the financial disaster they've created." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging between us like a physical presence. "What saddens me the most," I finally said, "is that they didn't need to do this. If they needed help, they could have asked me. I would have helped them, not enabled their extravagance, but helped them find a way out." Rebecca reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "Some people are blinded by greed, Nancy. They can't see past their immediate desires." The lab technician arrived, a young woman with tired eyes who accepted the glass with gloved hands and few questions, especially after Rebecca handed her an envelope that I assumed contained cash. "We should have results by morning," Rebecca said after the technician left. "In the meantime, you shouldn't go home. Lauren has a key to your house, doesn't she?" I nodded, the implications sinking in. If they were desperate enough to poison me in public, what might they do if they knew I'd discovered their plot? "You'll stay with me tonight," Rebecca stated rather than asked, "and tomorrow we'll decide how to handle this." "What options do I have?" My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Legally? We go to the police with the evidence. Lauren and Justin are arrested for attempted murder. There's a trial, publicity, your family name dragged through mud, and your daughter likely goes to prison." Rebecca's bluntness was one of her defining characteristics, and why I valued her counsel. "And the other option?" A grim smile touched her lips. "We get creative." The next morning I awoke in Rebecca's guest room after a night of fitful sleep. The early sunlight filtered through the curtains as I checked my phone. 3 missed calls and 5 text messages from Lauren, each more concerned sounding than the last. "Mom, are you okay? You seemed off last night." "Just checking in. Call me when you wake up." "Mom, I'm getting worried." "Please call." "Rebecca says you're staying with her. Is everything all right? Can we meet today? Justin and I want to talk about the foundation. Maybe reconsider some aspects." The audacity was breathtaking. I set the phone aside without replying and walked to the kitchen, where Rebecca was already dressed for the day and sipping coffee while reviewing documents. "Lab results," she said without preamble, sliding a report across the counter to me. I read it carefully, my hands growing cold with each line. The glass contained propranolol, a beta blocker that in high doses could cause severe bradycardia, hypotension, and cardiac arrest in someone with my pre-existing heart condition. A condition Lauren knew about intimately, having accompanied me to several cardiology appointments. "This would have killed me," I said quietly, "and looked like natural causes," Rebecca confirmed. "A sad but not unexpected heart attack in a woman your age with a known heart condition, especially one who had just received a large sum of money and might be under stress." I set the report down, a cold clarity washing over me. "I want to meet with them. Today." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure that's wise?" "Not at my house or yours. Here, in your office, with witnesses and security if needed." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I'll arrange it, and I'll call Richard Blackwell." "The ex-detective?" "Yes. He's been investigating Lauren and Justin more thoroughly. He should be here for this meeting." I spent the morning in Rebecca's home office, reviewing the foundation documents while she made arrangements. By noon, everything was set. Lauren and Justin had eagerly agreed to meet at 2 p.m., thinking they were going to discuss reconsidering the foundation allocation. At 1:30, I sat in Rebecca's conference room, preparing myself for what was to come. Richard Blackwell arrived shortly after, a bull, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and the watchful eyes of someone who had spent decades observing human behavior at its worst. "Mrs. Davis," he greeted me with a firm handshake. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "So do I, Mr. Blackwell. What have you found?" He opened his laptop and began presenting his findings. The picture was even worse than I had imagined. Not only were Lauren and Justin financially ruined, but there was evidence of Justin researching the effects of beta blockers on heart patients, Lauren using a fake name to purchase propranolol at a pharmacy across town, and both of them meeting with a loan shark known for his aggressive collection methods. "They owe this man over $800,000, Blackwell explained, showing me a surveillance photo. "He's not known for his patience." A knock at the door interrupted us. Rebecca's assistant announced that Lauren and Justin had arrived. "Show them in," Rebecca instructed, then turned to me. "Are you ready for this?" I straightened my shoulders, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Yes." When Lauren and Justin entered the conference room, they faltered momentarily at the sight of Richard Blackwell. Lauren quickly recovered, rushing toward me with open arms. "Mom, we were so worried about you." I took an imperceptible step back, avoiding her embrace. The brief flash of confusion in her eyes was quickly masked by concern. "Are you feeling all right? You seemed tired last night," she said, her voice syrupy with false solicitude. "Much better today," I replied evenly. It's amazing what surviving an attempted murder will do for one's clarity. The room went silent. Justin froze mid-motion as he was pulling out a chair. Lauren's smile remained fixed on her face, though all color drained from it. "What are you talking about?" She forced a laugh. "Mom, that's a terrible joke." "Please, sit down," Rebecca instructed, her voice leaving no room for argument. "We have a lot to discuss." They sat across from us, Lauren still maintaining her mask of confusion, Justin beginning to sweat visibly despite the room's cool temperature. I placed the toxicology report on the table and slid it toward them. Do you know what this is? Lauren glanced at it without touching it, while Justin stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. It's an analysis of my cranberry juice from last night, I continued, my voice steady. Interesting findings. Propranolol in a dose high enough to cause cardiac arrest in someone with my heart condition. Quite the coincidence, isn't it? Mom, I don't understand what you're implying, Lauren said, her voice rising slightly. Are you saying someone tried to poison you? That's horrible. We should call the police. Marcus Johnson, I said simply. Who? Lauren's confusion seemed genuine, but I wasn't fooled. The waiter. He saw you put something in my drink while I was taking Rebecca's call. He saw Justin keeping watch to make sure no one was looking. The facade cracked. Justin's hand moved to cover Lauren's in what might have looked like a supportive gesture to an outside observer, but which I recognized as a warning. This is absurd. Justin spoke for the first time, his voice controlled but with an underlying tremor. You're accusing us based on what? The word of some waiter? A lab report that could have been falsified? Nancy, you're not thinking clearly. Rebecca smiled, a cold, humorless expression. That's why we have Mr. Blackwell here. He's eager to share what he's discovered about both of you. Blackwell opened his folder and began methodically presenting the evidence. Justin's internet searches about beta blockers, Lauren's purchase of propranolol under a false name, their mounting debts, the meetings with loan sharks, and the foreclosure notice on their apartment. With each revelation, Lauren seemed to physically shrink, while Justin's face hardened into a mask of barely contained rage. So this is your plan? Lauren finally burst out, her voice bitter. To humiliate us? To hold this over our heads forever? What do you want from us, Mom? The question hung in the air. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Understanding? I want to know why, I said simply. How did my own daughter reach a point where killing me seemed like a reasonable solution? Lauren's eyes darted to Justin, then back to me. The calculation behind them was chilling, weighing options, measuring outcomes, looking for an escape route. You wouldn't understand, she finally said, her voice flat. Try me. She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. The pretense of affection was gone, replaced by a cold detachment that was somehow more frightening. You want to know why? Because you always cared more about your hotels, your precious business, your legacy than you cared about me. After Dad died, you buried yourself in work and left me to raise myself. And then you promised. You promised that one day it would all be mine, that I would finally have the life I deserve. Her words struck like physical blows. Was that what she truly believed? That my years of hard work, of sacrifice to provide for us both, had been some form of abandonment? And then you decide to give it all away to some strangers, she continued bitterly. $30 million to orphans who mean nothing to us, while Justin and I are about to lose everything. Lauren, I began, my voice unsteady. I worked so hard for us, to make sure you had opportunities I never had, so you would never worry about money the way I did growing up. And look where that got us, she replied with startling cruelty. You with your millions and me desperate enough to poison you to keep from losing everything. The rawness of the confession stunned everyone into silence. Justin stared at her in horror. Lauren, shut up, he hissed. You're confessing to a crime. She laughed, a hollow, lifeless sound. What difference does it make now? She knows. They all know. I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing the face of the little girl who had once held my hand crossing the street, who had cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, who had promised to always be there for me, just as I had been for her. And I made my decision. "You have two options," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "First option, Rebecca calls the police right now. You're arrested for attempted murder. With the evidence we have, a conviction is practically guaranteed. You'll spend years in prison." Lauren stared at the table, while Justin looked as if he might vomit. "Second option," I continued, "you sign the documents Rebecca has prepared. You confess everything in writing. The document will be secured in a safe deposit box. If anything happens to me, anything at all, natural or otherwise, it will be immediately handed over to the authorities." "And in return?" Justin asked, his voice barely audible. "In return, you disappear from my life forever. No contact, no attempts at reconciliation, no asking for money. You take what you have and leave the country. You start a new life far away from me." Rebecca placed a thick document on the table. It detailed their confession and bound them to never contact me again under penalty of the confession's release. "And the money?" Lauren asked, finally meeting my eyes. Even now, cornered and exposed, all she thought about was money. "I'll pay off your debts," I replied, feeling a deep sadness settle over me. "On the condition that you never return. The rest goes to the Gregory Davis Foundation as planned." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Lauren reached for the pen. "We have no choice," she muttered to Justin. "It's this or prison." As they signed the documents one by one, I felt an emptiness expanding inside me. This was the end. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, only the end of a family I had spent my entire life trying to protect and nurture. "Mr. Blackwell will accompany you to your apartment to collect essential belongings," Rebecca informed them when they finished. "You have 48 hours to leave the country. If you don't comply with this deadline, the police will be notified immediately." Justin nodded, defeated. Lauren continued to stare at the table as if she couldn't believe what had happened. "One last thing," I said as they stood to leave. "Why the elaborate lie about abandonment? You know it's not true. I gave everything for you, Lauren. Absolutely everything." She finally looked up, and I saw something I had never noticed before. A deep emptiness, as if something essential was missing inside her. "Because it was easier," she answered with terrifying honesty. "Easier than working, than saving, than building something from scratch like you did. Easier than admitting we had ruined our finances. Easier than accepting our lifestyle was a lie." Her words hung in the air like poison. No love, no hate, just a cold, calculating convenience that made me feel as if I was looking at a stranger. "Goodbye, Lauren," I sadly said, each word feeling like a heavy stone. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She didn't reply. She simply followed Justin and Richard Blackwell out of the room without looking back. The door closed with a soft click, and suddenly I realized my daughter was gone. Not physically, but the person I had loved, the one I had raised, no longer existed. Maybe she never had. Rebecca and I sat in silence for several minutes. She finally took my hand. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, unable to speak. The tears I had held back throughout the meeting finally came, a silent stream running down my face. "I'll take you home," she said gently. On the drive, looking out the car window, I saw families walking on the sidewalks. Mothers holding the hands of small children, teenagers arguing with their parents. Common everyday scenes that now seemed to belong to a world to which I no longer had access. 2 weeks passed. Richard Blackwell confirmed that Lauren and Justin had left the country for Portugal, using what little money they had left. I settled into a quiet routine, walking on the beach near my house in the morning, working on the details of the Gregory Davis Foundation in the afternoon, and sitting on the balcony with a cup of tea in the evening, watching the sea and trying to understand how I had gotten to this point. The promise to pay their debts was kept, not out of generosity, but because I didn't want loan sharks looking for them and eventually coming to me. It cost $2.1 million to clear everything, a staggering amount that highlighted the extent of their financial recklessness. My house felt too large, too empty. Every corner held memories of Lauren growing up, her first steps in the living room, homework at the kitchen table, teenage arguments that echoed down the hallway. I considered selling it, but couldn't bring myself to make the call. It wasn't just a house. It was the physical embodiment of our family history, flawed as it was. One evening, as darkness settled over the ocean, Rebecca showed up unannounced. She carried a folder under her arm and a determined expression on her face. "Enough moping," she declared, placing the folder on the patio table. "It's time to start living again." I looked at her, surprised by her direct approach. "What's this?" "Key projects," she replied, opening the folder. "Projects for the Gregory Davis Foundation. Things you can do now, people you can help, lives you can change." Inside were detailed proposals: a shelter for orphaned children, a scholarship program for young people from underserved communities, a vocational training center for vulnerable populations. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked, leafing through the pages. Rebecca sat down next to me, her gaze direct and frank as ever. "Because you're drowning in sadness and guilt. You're wondering where you went wrong, what you could have done differently." She paused, ensuring she had my full attention. "But the truth, Nancy, is that some people just make bad choices. No matter how well they're raised, how loved they are, they choose the wrong path." I remained silent, absorbing her words. "Lauren made her choice," she continued. "Now it's time for you to make yours. You can hide here mourning what you've lost, or you can transform that pain into something positive. You can honor Gregory's memory not just with his name on a foundation, but with actions he would have been proud of." I looked at the projects spread before me. Each represented an opportunity to do something meaningful, to perhaps fill the void that Lauren had left. "I don't know if I have the strength for that," I admitted. Rebecca smiled, kind but determined. "You built an empire from scratch after Gregory died. You raised a daughter alone. You survived a murder attempt by the person you loved most in the world. You have the strength for anything, Nancy Davis." That night after Rebecca left, I sat at my desk with the foundation proposals. I started making notes, suggestions, plans. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt something beyond pain, a purpose. The next morning, I called Rebecca early. "I want to start with the shelter," I announced without preamble. "There's a property near downtown that would be perfect. We can begin construction in a month if we expedite the paperwork." "Welcome back," she replied simply. And so began the next phase of my life. Not as a mother, not as a businesswoman, but as someone determined to transform a personal tragedy into a legacy of hope for others. 6 months passed like a dream. The pain remained, a dull, constant ache beneath everything I did, but I found that keeping busy dulled its edge. The Gregory Davis Foundation had moved from concept to reality with remarkable speed, thanks to Rebecca's legal expertise and my newfound determination. The first project, the Gregory Davis Children's Home, was already under construction on a beautiful property just 10 minutes from downtown. The 2-acre lot featured mature oak trees and a natural slope that the architects had incorporated brilliantly into the design. Where once stood an abandoned community center, walls were now rising for what would become a home for 50 orphaned children. On this crisp autumn morning, I stood at the construction site, hard hat in place, watching workers pour concrete for the foundation. Rebecca joined me, clipboard in hand, reviewing the project timeline with the construction foreman. We're ahead of schedule, the foreman, a burly man named Frank, announced with pride. If the weather holds, we'll have the roof on before winter. Excellent, Rebecca replied, making a note. And the special modifications for the central courtyard? All taken care of. We preserved the yellow oak tree just like Mrs. Davis requested. The whole building wraps around it now. I nodded in approval. The oak reminded me of one Gregory and I had planted in our first home when Lauren was just a baby. Small choices like this kept his memory alive in ways that felt deeply personal. After the site visit, Rebecca and I drove to a small cafe for lunch. The familiar routine was comforting. Her black coffee and chicken salad, my tea and soup. Today, however, she seemed preoccupied, checking her phone more frequently than usual. Something on your mind? I finally asked as she glanced at her screen for the third time in 5 minutes. She set her phone down decisively. I received an interesting application for our scholarship program, a doctoral candidate in cardiology research at Boston University. And this is unusual because her proposal is revolutionary, regenerative heart tissue that could prevent deaths like Gregory's, and because she specifically requested to meet with you, not just the foundation committee. I raised an eyebrow. That's presumptuous. Perhaps. Rebecca sipped her coffee thoughtfully. But I've reviewed her credentials. They're impeccable. Harvard undergrad, Johns Hopkins Medical School, published in 3 major journals before 30. And her research. She paused. Nancy, it could save thousands of lives annually. Many applicants have impressive backgrounds, I countered, stirring my tea absently. True, but there's something about this one. Her name is Olivia Carter. I think you should meet her. I studied Rebecca's face. We'd been friends long enough for me to recognize when she wasn't telling me everything. Why are you pushing this? She met my gaze directly. Because you need more than just buildings and committees, Nancy. You need personal connection to the work. This project, it's exactly what Gregory would have championed. I sighed, knowing she was right. The past months, despite my activity, had been strangely hollow. I'd thrown myself into foundation business with mechanical efficiency, but rarely felt the emotional connection I'd hoped for. Fine. Set up the meeting. Rebecca's smile was oddly satisfied. Already did. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. at her lab. I told her you'd be there to evaluate her work personally. Presumptuous of you, too, I retorted, but without heat. It's why you keep me around. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. Trust me on this one, Nancy. Back at home that evening, I reviewed Olivia Carter's application materials. Her research focused on regenerating damaged heart tissue using modified stem cells, a technique that, if successful, could revolutionize treatment for heart attack survivors. The potential was undeniable, but what struck me most was the passion evident in her writing. This wasn't just academic ambition. There was something deeply personal driving her work. My phone chimed with a text from Marcus Johnson, the waiter who had saved my life. We'd kept in sporadic contact. He had graduated with his master's degree in criminology, and I'd written him a glowing recommendation for his FBI application. Just checking in, Mrs. D. Hope the foundation is coming along well. Still clean and sober here, and the interview process is moving forward. Thank you again for everything. I smiled, typing back. All good here, Marcus. The children's home breaks ground next week. Proud of your progress. They'd be fools not to hire you. These small connections had become precious to me. Rebecca, Marcus, the foundation staff. They formed a new kind of family. Not a replacement for what I'd lost, but something valuable nonetheless. As I prepared for bed, I found myself thinking of Gregory. Tomorrow would have been our 42nd anniversary. I wondered what he would think of the woman I'd become. Stronger in some ways, more fragile in others. I liked to believe he'd be proud of the foundation, of how I'd channeled my pain into purpose. I miss you, I whispered to his photograph on my nightstand. "I could use your wisdom right about now." Sleep came fitfully that night, filled with dreams of the past. Gregory's laugh, Lauren as a little girl splashing in ocean waves, family dinners around our old oak table. I woke before dawn with tears on my cheeks, but a strange sense of anticipation about the day ahead. The next morning, I dressed with unusual care, a tailored navy suit, pearl earrings Gregory had given me on our 20th anniversary, light makeup. I told myself it was appropriate for a foundation director meeting a potential grant recipient, but in truth, it felt like armor against the world. Boston University's medical campus was a maze of modern buildings and renovated brownstones. The Cardiovascular Research Center occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower. After checking in with security, I was directed to the 5th floor, where a graduate student was waiting to escort me. "Dr. Carter is just finishing up a procedure, Mrs. Davis," the young man explained as we walked. "She asked if you'd mind observing the final stages. It's directly relevant to the research she's hoping to discuss with you." "That would be fine," I replied, curious despite myself. He led me to an observation room overlooking a state-of-the-art laboratory. Through the glass, I could see a team in scrubs gathered around what appeared to be a complex apparatus maintaining a beating heart. Not human, I noted with relief, but porcine. A slender woman in her late 20s stood at the center, directing the others with quiet authority. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her movements precise and confident. Even from a distance, there was something oddly familiar about her, perhaps in the set of her shoulders or the tilt of her head as she studied the monitors. "That's the experimental cardiac tissue we've developed," the graduate student explained, pointing to a small section being carefully integrated into the heart. "It's designed to grow with the existing tissue, eventually replacing damaged areas completely." I watched, fascinated, as the team completed the procedure. The woman I assumed was Dr. Carter stepped back, checked the monitors, and nodded with satisfaction. She said something to her team that made them laugh, then removed her mask and looked up directly at the observation window. Our eyes met, and I felt an inexplicable jolt of recognition, though I was certain we'd never met before. She said something to her team, then headed for the door. Minutes later, she entered the observation room, hand extended. "Mrs. Davis, thank you so much for coming. I'm Olivia Carter." Her voice was warm, her handshake firm. "I hope the demonstration wasn't too graphic." "Not at all. It was fascinating," I replied honestly. Up close, the sense of familiarity intensified. There was something in her smile, in the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. It reminded me of someone, though I couldn't place who. "Would you like a tour of the lab before we discuss the proposal?" she offered. "I'd like that very much." For the next hour, Olivia guided me through the research facility, explaining their work with a passion that was infectious. She had a gift for making complex scientific concepts accessible without oversimplification, and I found myself increasingly impressed not just with her intellect, but with her evident dedication. "This is the heart of our project," she said, leading me to an area separated by glass partitions. Inside, several researchers worked with microscopes and equipment I didn't recognize. On a central table, a device pulsed gently, simulating the beat of a human heart. "We're developing an artificial heart tissue that can be integrated into damaged muscle," she explained. "Using the patient's own stem cells, we eliminate the risk of rejection and accelerate the recovery process." "And how close are you to human trials?" I asked. "That's exactly why I'm applying for your foundation's grant," she replied. "With adequate funding, we could begin preliminary clinical trials within a year." By the time we reached her small office for coffee, my initial skepticism had given way to genuine interest. This was innovative work with enormous potential impact. "How much would you need for the next phase?" I asked as we settled into chairs. She hesitated, biting her lower lip, a gesture that again struck me as oddly familiar. $600,000 for the next year. That would allow us to hire 2 more researchers and acquire essential equipment for preliminary clinical trials. It was a substantial sum, but well within the Foundation's capabilities. Why hasn't the National Institutes of Health funded this? They have partially, but the process is competitive and slow. We're racing against time. Every day of delay means more lives lost to heart disease. I nodded, understanding the urgency. Gregory had died within minutes of his heart attack. The doctors said there was nothing that could have been done. But research like Olivia's could change that equation for future patients. Throughout our conversation, the nagging sense of recognition persisted. Finally, I had to ask, Dr. Carter, I hope you don't find this strange, but you seem familiar to me. Have we met before? She set down her coffee cup slowly, her expression becoming serious. Not exactly, Mrs. Davis, but I believe we have a connection. She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. How much has Rebecca told you about me? Just your professional credentials, I replied, suddenly wary. Why do you ask? Olivia took a deep breath. Because Rebecca knows something I asked her not to share until we'd met. I wanted you to see my work first, to judge it on its own merits before complications arose. What complications? My voice had sharpened without my intending it. Instead of answering directly, Olivia opened her desk drawer and removed a framed photograph, which she passed to me silently. It showed an older couple, a tall, gray-haired man with an arm around a plump, kind-faced woman. They stood on the porch of a modest suburban home, smiling widely at the camera. My parents, Olivia said softly. Or rather the people who raised me, James and Margaret Carter. My adoptive parents. I looked up at her, confusion giving way to a dawning realization that seemed impossible. Your adoptive parents, I repeated slowly. She nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. My biological mother had me when she was 17. She couldn't or didn't want to raise me. I was adopted by the Carters, a schoolteacher and a hotel manager from Ohio. My hands began to tremble. What are you saying? I believe I'm your granddaughter, Mrs. Davis, she said gently. Lauren had a baby, me, when she was in high school. She gave me up for adoption and never told you. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I stared at Olivia, searching her face with new eyes. Now the familiarity made devastating sense. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile, the gesture of biting her lip when uncertain. All Lauren's mannerisms echoed in this young woman I hadn't known existed until this moment. That's impossible, I whispered, though I already knew it wasn't. Lauren would have told me. Olivia's expression was compassionate but firm. I have documentation, Mrs. Davis. Birth records, adoption papers, DNA confirmation if you want it. My mind raced backward through time. When Lauren was 17, she had gone to stay with my sister in Connecticut for 4 months, supposedly for an academic program at a prestigious high school. She'd returned thinner, quieter, but I'd attributed the changes to normal teenage development, to the rigors of the program. Had I been so blind? So easily deceived by my own child? How long have you known, I finally managed, about you specifically? 2 years. She folded her hands carefully on her desk. My adoptive parents were always honest about my adoption. When I turned 25, they gave me the documents they had. Not much, just a name. Lauren Davis from Boston. I didn't search for her immediately. I had a good life. Wonderful parents. I didn't feel a void that needed filling. Then why look at all? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Medical history, she replied simply. I'm a doctor. I know how important genetic predispositions can be. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, these things run in families. The irony was staggering. Gregory had died of a heart attack, and here was his granddaughter, a cardiologist developing treatments that might have saved him. When I found Lauren's name, it led me to you, Olivia continued. I learned about seaside retreats, about the foundation you were establishing. I was watching from afar, trying to decide whether to make contact. A horrible thought struck me. Did you know about what happened? With Lauren? Olivia nodded slowly. Rebecca told me yes. After we became acquainted through the Foundation Scholarship Program. At first, she was just the director who reviewed my application. We became friends because she visited the lab often, showed genuine interest in my work. Eventually, I confided in her about who I thought I was. And she didn't tell me? The sense of betrayal was fresh, raw. I asked her not to, Olivia admitted. I needed to meet you on my own terms, not as a consolation prize for Lauren's betrayal. The blunt assessment made me flinch, but I couldn't deny its accuracy. So this meeting, the grant application, was any of it real? I asked, a hard edge entering my voice. All of it, she insisted, leaning forward earnestly. Every word about my research is true. The need is genuine. The potential impact is real. I would never use something this important as a mere pretense. I believed her, which only made the situation more complex. I stood, needing space, movement, air that wasn't thick with revelation. I need time to process this, I said, gathering my purse. Of course. Olivia rose as well, maintaining a respectful distance. Take all the time you need. The grant proposal stands on its own merits, regardless of personal complications. At the door, I paused, turning back to her. Have you met Lauren? Pain flashed across Olivia's features. I tried. 3 months ago, I traveled to Portugal. I found where she was working, but she stopped, visibly composing herself. She refused to meet me, said that part of her life was closed, that it was better if I went my way and she went hers. Even after everything Lauren had done, this new cruelty shocked me, rejecting her own daughter, denying her even a conversation. I'm sorry, I said, the words inadequate but sincere. It's all right. Olivia attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As I said, I have wonderful parents. I wasn't looking for a mother, but I thought maybe you might like to know you have a granddaughter. That part of your legacy continues in a way you didn't expect. I nodded, unable to form a coherent response, and left the office. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The revelations of the day threatened to overwhelm me completely. Outside the medical center, I called Rebecca. You knew, I said when she answered, my voice tight with emotion. A pause. Yes. For how long? 3 months. Since Olivia told me. Nancy, Not over the phone, I cut her off. Meet me at my house in an hour. I hung up before she could respond. The drive home passed in a blur. Traffic lights, other vehicles, pedestrians all seemed part of another reality entirely, one I was merely passing through. My mind was consumed with images of Lauren at 17, pregnant and alone. Why hadn't she told me? Did she think I would have been angry? Disappointed? Hadn't I always tried to show her unconditional love? And Olivia, my granddaughter, a brilliant young doctor working to solve the very problem that had taken her grandfather. The cosmic irony was almost too much to bear. When I arrived home, Rebecca was already waiting on the porch, her expression wary but resolute. I walked past her without a word, unlocking the door and heading straight for the liquor cabinet. I poured 2 fingers of Gregory's favorite scotch, something I hadn't touched since his death, and drank it in one burning swallow. "That bad?" Rebecca asked quietly from the doorway. "You should have told me." I poured another drink, but didn't immediately consume it. "I gave my word, Nancy. Olivia needed to approach you her way." "Did you arrange the meeting? The grant application?" Rebecca shook her head. "The research is legitimate. The application came through normal channels. I recognized her name from previous publications, but I didn't know who she was until after we'd already met several times to discuss the Foundation's priorities. When she told me, I was as shocked as you are." I sank into an armchair, suddenly exhausted. "She's Gregory's granddaughter, Becca, our granddaughter, and we never knew she existed." Rebecca sat opposite me, her face softening. "I know, it's a lot to process. But Nancy, isn't it also a gift? After everything that happened with Lauren, to discover you have this connection, this remarkable young woman who shares your blood, and from what I can see, your determination." "Lauren rejected her," I said, the pain of it fresh. "Her own daughter. Turned her away without even a conversation." "That's Lauren's loss," Rebecca replied firmly. "It doesn't have to be yours." I stared into the amber liquid in my glass, seeing reflections of the past and glimpses of a future I'd never imagined. "I don't know what to do with this information." "You don't have to decide anything today. Take time. Get to know Olivia, or don't. The choice is yours." I set the untouched drink aside. "The research is sound? The grant application legitimate?" "Absolutely. Her work could save thousands of lives." "Then approve it," I said decisively. "Whatever else happens, the research deserves support." Rebecca nodded, relief visible in her expression. "I'll handle the paperwork. And Nancy, for what it's worth, I think Olivia is someone worth knowing, not as a replacement for Lauren, but as herself." After Rebecca left, I spent hours going through old photo albums, pictures of Lauren as a baby, a child, a teenager. I scrutinized the photos from around the time she would have been pregnant, looking for signs I'd missed. There was one, Lauren at Christmas, 16 going on 17, wearing an oversized sweater, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Had she known then? Was she already carrying Olivia? I found myself staring at the last photo taken of Gregory before his death, standing on the deck of our first hotel, arms spread wide with pride. What would he have thought about having a granddaughter? About her becoming a doctor? He would have been overjoyed, I realized. Regardless of the circumstances, Gregory would have embraced Olivia wholeheartedly. That night I dreamt of 3 generations of women, myself, Lauren, and Olivia, standing on a beach. In the dream, Lauren turned and walked away into the ocean, while Olivia remained, her hand tentatively reaching for mine. I woke at dawn with a decision made. The following week passed in a whirlwind of Foundation business. I deliberately immersed myself in work, needing time to process everything I'd learned. Rebecca, to her credit, gave me space, handling the approval of Olivia's grant without pressuring me about personal contact. By Friday, I'd reached a decision. I called Olivia's lab and left a message asking if she would be willing to have dinner at my home on Saturday evening. She returned the call within the hour, accepting with a warmth that both reassured and terrified me. I spent Saturday morning in an uncharacteristic frenzy of preparation. Cleaning, grocery shopping, menu planning. I settled on making Gregory's favorite pasta primavera, then questioned the choice. Was it too presumptuous to share family recipes already? Too intimate? In the end, I kept the menu, reasoning that food had always been Gregory's way of connecting with people, and perhaps that tradition should continue. At precisely 7, the doorbell rang. Olivia stood on the porch holding a small bouquet of daisies and a bottle of wine. She'd changed from her lab attire into a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. The resemblance to a younger Lauren was even more pronounced, though Olivia's expression held none of Lauren's calculation or brittleness. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, holding out the flowers. "These reminded me of the ones growing outside your foundation offices." "They're lovely," I replied, accepting both gifts and stepping aside to let her enter. "Please come in." The initial awkwardness dissipated as we worked together in the kitchen. Olivia insisted on helping, chopping vegetables with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to precision work. Our conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected, focusing initially on neutral topics: her research, the children's home construction, Boston's unseasonably warm autumn. "You're comfortable in the kitchen," I observed as she expertly minced garlic. "Mom taught me from childhood," she replied with a fond smile. "She says doctors need to know how to eat well. They can't survive on hospital cafeteria food." The casual reference to her adoptive mother sent a twinge through me, part jealousy, part gratitude that she'd been raised with love. "Your grandfather loved to cook," I found myself saying. "Gregory said it was his therapy after a long day. His pasta sauce was legendary in our neighborhood." Olivia's eyes brightened with interest. "I have a weakness for pasta, too. My specialty is lasagna." "Must run in the family," I said without thinking, then froze, uncertain how she would take the acknowledgement of our connection. But Olivia just smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "I'd like to think so." Over dinner, our conversation gradually deepened. Olivia shared stories about her childhood in suburban Cleveland, her father's dedication to the small hotel he managed, her mother's patient guidance as an elementary school teacher, her own early fascination with medicine. "Dad used to bring home the little soaps from the hotel for my bath," she recalled, laughing. "I had the cleanest dolls in the neighborhood. In return, I found myself sharing memories of Gregory, of building our business together, even carefully edited stories of Lauren's early years." The name hung between us, unavoidable but approached with caution. Finally, as we lingered over coffee and apple tart, Olivia asked the question I'd been dreading. "What was she like? As a child, I mean." I took a deep breath, searching for honest words that wouldn't deepen wounds. "She was vibrant, full of energy and curiosity. She loved adventure, always wanting to explore, discover new places. She wasn't academically inclined, but she made up for it with creativity. She drew beautifully. For a while, we thought she might pursue art professionally." "What changed?" The question was gentle but direct. It was the same question I had asked myself countless times since the betrayal. "I don't know for certain," I admitted. "After Gregory died, something shifted in her. She became more reserved, more calculating. In her teenage years, she grew increasingly concerned with status, with appearances, with what others thought. She always wanted the best, the most expensive, the most exclusive. I thought it was a phase she would outgrow." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "When I met her in Portugal, even in that brief encounter, I noticed something strange about her. A coldness, a distance, as if she were constantly evaluating, measuring. Do you think I could have prevented it?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. That I did something wrong in raising her? Olivia reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. Her touch was warm, steady. "As a doctor, I've learned there are factors beyond our control. Genetic predispositions, brain chemistry, formative experiences that seem insignificant but profoundly shape personality. I don't think you could have predicted or prevented the path she chose." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "Look at me. I have the same genetic material as Lauren, but I was raised by different people in a different environment, and I became a completely different person. That tells me it's not just nurture or just nature. It's a complex combination of factors, many beyond a parent's control. Her words brought an unexpected relief. For months I had carried the weight of guilt, questioning every decision I'd made as a mother. Hearing Olivia, a doctor, a scientist, but also Lauren's daughter, say that perhaps it wasn't my fault loosened a knot in my chest I hadn't realized was there. "Thank you for that," I whispered. "I'm not just saying what you want to hear," she insisted. "It's what I truly believe." After dinner, we moved to the living room where I brought out the family photo albums. Together, we turned pages that documented the history of the Davis family. My wedding to Gregory, Lauren's childhood, beach vacations, graduations, birthdays. Olivia absorbed everything with insatiable curiosity, asking questions, laughing at the stories behind each image. "This is me at about your age," I said, pointing to a photo of myself at 27, standing proudly in front of our first hotel. "The resemblance is remarkable," she observed. "Same eyes, same facial structure." We finally reached the most recent photos, Lauren and Justin at their wedding 3 years earlier. "He seems unpleasant," Olivia commented, studying Justin's image. "He could be charming when he wanted to be," I explained, "but there was always something about him that made me uncomfortable, a falseness he couldn't quite disguise." "And now they're separated," she murmured. "She's alone in Portugal." I detected concern in her voice. "You still care about her even after she rejected you?" Olivia shrugged, a gesture of vulnerability. "It's strange, isn't it? I never really knew her. She's biologically my mother, but she's a complete stranger. Still, I can't help wondering about her, worrying about her." "It's your heart," I said softly, reaching out to touch her cheek. "Too generous for your own good, perhaps." She smiled, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Maybe, but that doesn't mean I'll try again. She made it clear she doesn't want me in her life. I respect her choice." As the evening drew to a close, we stood at the door, the awkwardness of our first meeting replaced by something tentative but warm. "Thank you for dinner," Olivia said, "and for the stories, the photos, for sharing your family with me." "Our family," I corrected gently. "If you want it to be." Her eyes brightened with unshed tears. "I'd like that very much." "Then perhaps we could do this again next week? There's a new exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts I've been meaning to see." "I'd love that." She hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me briefly. "Good night, Grandma." The word sent a jolt through me, surprise mingled with a fierce, unexpected joy. After Olivia left, I sat on the porch swing, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The evening had been more healing than I could have anticipated. There was no replacing Lauren or erasing the pain of her betrayal. But in Olivia, I had found something unexpected. A second chance at family, at connection. And for the first time since that terrible dinner 6 months ago, I felt something like hope. The next month brought a remarkable shift in my life. Olivia and I settled into a comfortable routine of weekly dinners and occasional outings. Each meeting revealed new connections. She had Gregory's analytical mind, my determination, and a compassion that was entirely her own. I learned about her life in careful layers, her childhood in Cleveland, college years at Harvard where she'd worked nights in a campus coffee shop to supplement her scholarship, the challenges and triumphs of medical school at Johns Hopkins. She spoke of her adoptive parents with such love that any lingering jealousy I might have felt was replaced by profound gratitude. "Would you like to meet them?" she asked one evening as we walked along the harbor. "My parents, I mean. They've been asking about you." The question caught me off guard. "They want to meet me?" "Of course." Olivia's smile was reassuring. "They've always been incredibly supportive of my connection to my biological family. Mom says family is where you find love, not just where you share blood. And the more love in life, the better. They sound like remarkable people, I said, meaning it. They are, and they're coming to Boston next weekend for the medical school alumni gala. I thought perhaps a lunch at my apartment? Nothing formal, just a chance to meet. The prospect was both appealing and terrifying. What if they don't like me? What if they think I'm trying to, I don't know, insert myself where I don't belong? Olivia laughed, a genuine sound of amusement, not mockery. Grandma, they're the least territorial people I know. Mom has been asking to meet you since I first told them we'd connected. The casual use of Grandma still gave me a small thrill each time. Then I'd be honored to meet them, I replied. The following Saturday found me at Olivia's Cambridge apartment, a charming if small one-bedroom near the medical campus. I'd arrived early at her request to help with lunch preparations, but I suspected she also wanted to give me time to settle my nerves before her parents arrived. Dad's already called twice to check the address, she said, laughing as she chopped herbs for a salad. He's terrible with GPS, and Mom refuses to use smartphones on principle. What principle is that? I asked, arranging cheese on a platter. That technology is making us less present with each other. She's not wrong, but it makes coordination challenging sometimes. A knock at the door sent a flutter of anxiety through me. Olivia squeezed my hand briefly before going to answer it. James and Margaret Carter were exactly as they'd appeared in the photograph, though more animated in person. James was tall and lean, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Margaret was shorter, plump, with a warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "Nancy," she said, bypassing my extended hand to envelop me in a hug. "What a blessing to finally meet you." Her genuine warmth dissolved my anxiety. James shook my hand with proper respect, his eyes taking in the apartment with professional assessment. "A pleasure, Mrs. Davis. Olivia has told us so much about you and your foundation." Lunch was a revelation. James, it turned out, had managed the Grand Sierra Hotel in Cleveland for 35 years, working his way up from desk clerk to general manager. We found immediate common ground discussing the hospitality industry. "Nothing like your chain, of course," he said modestly, "but we prided ourselves on personal service. Guests came back year after year, asking for specific rooms, specific staff." "That's the true mark of a good hotel," I agreed. "Not the thread count or the amenities, but whether guests feel genuinely welcomed." Margaret, meanwhile, charmed me with stories of Olivia's childhood, science fair projects that took over the garage, a backyard hospital for neighborhood pets and toys, the determination that had marked her from an early age. "She was reading medical journals by 13, Margaret recalled proudly. "We couldn't understand half the words, but we knew our girl was special." "Still is," I added, catching Olivia's embarrassed smile. As the afternoon progressed, I realized that my fear of territorialism had been entirely misplaced. The Carters didn't see me as competition for Olivia's affection, but as an addition to their family circle, a connection to be celebrated rather than guarded against. When they prepared to leave, Margaret hugged me again. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked, puzzled. "For giving us our daughter," she replied simply, "and for being here for her now. Some women in your position might resent us, might try to claim her completely, but you're not that kind of person. Olivia was right about you." Her words touched me deeply. "I'm the one who should be thanking you. You raised an extraordinary young woman when I paused, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "When I didn't even know she existed." "God has his ways," Margaret said, patting my arm. "Not always the ways we choose, but here we are anyway, all connected now." After they left, Olivia and I cleaned up in companionable silence. Finally she spoke. "That went well, I think." Your parents are wonderful people, I replied sincerely. I see where you get your compassion, your groundedness. She smiled, pleased by the observation. They'd like you to come for Thanksgiving, if you're willing. It's a big affair at our house. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors without family nearby. Dad makes 3 different kinds of pie. The invitation caught me off guard. Since the estrangement from Lauren, I'd planned to spend the holiday alone, perhaps volunteering at a community dinner. I wouldn't want to impose on your family tradition, I began. Olivia took my hands in hers, her expression earnest. You're part of that family now if you want to be. Not to replace anyone or change what came before, but to add to it. That's how the Carters work. We expand. We include. We? I asked, noting her identification with her adoptive family. Yes, we. They're my parents in all the ways that matter most. She paused, measuring her words. That doesn't mean there isn't room in my life for you, for this connection we're building. Family isn't a zero-sum game. I thought of the lonely holiday stretching before me, contrasted with the warm chaos she described. Then I accept, with gratitude. Later that evening, as I prepared for bed, I found myself reflecting on the day's revelations. The Carters had shown me a model of family I'd never experienced, one built on generosity rather than possession, on abundance rather than scarcity. It was a stark contrast to what Lauren and Justin had become, people so afraid of losing what they had that they were willing to destroy others to keep it. The Carters, despite their modest means, embodied a richness of spirit that no amount of money could buy. For the first time, I wondered if perhaps Lauren's betrayal, painful as it was, had broken something that needed breaking. A narrow definition of family that had kept me from seeing broader possibilities. Without that rupture, I might never have discovered Olivia, never met the Carters, never understood that family could be chosen as well as born. It wasn't a consolation for what I'd lost. Nothing could fully heal that wound. But it was a gift nonetheless, one I was increasingly grateful to receive. 1 year after discovering Lauren's betrayal, I stood on the grounds of the Gregory Davis Children's Home, watching as workers installed the sign above the main entrance. The morning sun glinted off the polished brass letters, making them shine like a promise kept. The transformation of the property was remarkable. What had once been an abandoned community center was now a warm, welcoming facility designed to house 50 children. The 2-story main building wrapped around a central courtyard where the preserved yellow oak tree stood proud and tall, its branches stretching protectively over benches and play areas. It's even more beautiful than the renderings, Rebecca said, joining me on the flagstone path. She handed me a clipboard with the final inspection checklist. The county inspector signed off this morning. We can welcome the first children next week. I studied the building with satisfaction. Every detail had been carefully considered. Bedrooms designed to feel personal rather than institutional. Study spaces filled with natural light. A library stocked with books for all ages. A dining hall that felt like a family kitchen writ large. Gregory would have loved this, I said softly. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. He sees it, Nancy. I believe that. Inside, staff members were preparing for the home's opening, setting up bedrooms, stocking kitchen pantries, hanging artwork created by local school children. The atmosphere was one of anticipation and purpose. Melissa Jenkins, the home's newly hired director, greeted us in the main hall. A former social worker with 20 years of experience, she radiated calm competence. Mrs. Davis, we just received confirmation from Family Services. The first group, 12 children ranging from 5 to 14, will arrive next Tuesday. Her eyes shone with excitement. Some of these kids have never had their own beds before. The thought caught in my throat. I had grown up with little, but always had the basics. The idea of children without even that minimal security reinforced the importance of what we'd built here. Make sure there's a stuffed animal on each bed, I instructed, and perhaps art supplies in the activity room, something they can use right away. Already arranged, Melissa assured me. And each child will have a welcome basket with essentials and a few small comforts. Rebecca checked her watch. Nancy, we should head to the lab. Olivia's presentation starts in an hour. We drove across town to Boston University Medical Center, where Olivia's research team was presenting their preliminary clinical trial results to the hospital board and major donors. The Gregory Davis Foundation had been the primary funder for the past year, but for the trials to expand, they needed additional support. The auditorium was nearly full when we arrived. I recognized several prominent physicians and philanthropists among the audience. Rebecca and I took seats reserved in the front row just as Olivia approached the podium. At 29, my granddaughter commanded the room with quiet authority. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun, she looked both scholarly and approachable. I felt a surge of pride watching her prepare her presentation. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and confident. "Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Olivia Carter, lead researcher on the Cardiac Regeneration Project. Over the past year, our team has been developing and testing a revolutionary approach to treating damaged heart tissue using modified stem cells." For the next 30 minutes, she detailed their progress, technical enough to satisfy the medical professionals, but accessible enough that even I could follow the essential points. The results were promising. In the initial trial with 12 patients suffering from moderate heart damage, 11 showed significant improvement in cardiac function after receiving the experimental treatment. "We're not just talking about managing symptoms," Olivia emphasized, her passion evident. "We're talking about actual regeneration of damaged tissue. In essence, we're helping hearts heal themselves." She concluded by outlining the next phase, an expanded trial with 100 patients across 3 hospitals, and the funding required to make it happen. The applause was enthusiastic. During the reception afterward, I watched as Olivia fielded questions from potential donors with grace and precision. Several committed on the spot to supporting the expanded trials. "Your granddaughter is remarkable," Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the hospital's chief of cardiology, commented as we watched Olivia explain a complex aspect of the treatment to a group of physicians. Brilliant, of course, but also able to communicate complex ideas clearly. That's rare in someone so young. "Yes, she is," I agreed, not bothering to hide my pride. The term granddaughter no longer felt strange on my tongue. It had become one of my greatest joys. When the reception ended, Olivia joined us, her eyes bright with excitement. 3 major donors committed. If their pledges come through as promised, we'll have full funding for Phase 2. "That's wonderful news," I replied, hugging her. "Your presentation was compelling." "Let's celebrate," Rebecca suggested. "Dinner at Giovanni's? My treat." Over pasta and wine at the elegant Italian restaurant, Olivia shared more details about the upcoming trials and the patients who would benefit. Her enthusiasm was contagious, her vision clear. "If all goes as planned, we could have an FDA-approved treatment within 5 years, she explained. Something that could be available in hospitals nationwide. "Lives saved that would otherwise be lost," I murmured, thinking of Gregory. While nothing could bring him back, there was profound satisfaction in knowing his legacy would help prevent similar tragedies for other families. "I have some news as well," Rebecca interjected, setting down her wine glass. "The Foundation received official recognition from the State Department of Children's Services today. They're citing us as a model program." "That's fantastic," Olivia exclaimed. "The children's home hasn't even opened yet." "It's the comprehensive approach they're impressed with," Rebecca explained. "Not just shelter, but education support, psychological services, family reunification when possible. Most facilities focus on just one aspect. As we discussed future foundation projects, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Marcus Johnson, who had completed FBI training and now worked in their Boston field office. Just heard about the children's home approval. Congratulations, Mrs. D. Let me know when the official opening is. I'd like to be there if possible. I smiled, typing back, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Would love to have you there. These connections form the fabric of my new life. Rebecca, Olivia, the Carters, Marcus, the foundation staff. Different from the family I had imagined, but no less meaningful. Later that evening, Olivia and I walked along the harbor, enjoying the mild spring air. She seemed preoccupied, checking her phone more frequently than usual. Everything all right? I asked as she glanced at the screen for the third time in minutes. She hesitated, then nodded decisively as if coming to a decision. I received an email yesterday. From Lauren. The name still had the power to stop my breath. What did she want? She said she'd seen an article about my research online. Apparently the university press release was picked up by some international medical journals. Olivia's voice remained neutral, though I could sense the emotional current beneath. She said she was proud. Did you reply? I kept my tone equally even, not wanting to influence her either way. Not yet. I'm not sure if I should. We walked in silence for a moment, the gentle lapping of waves against the harbor wall providing a soothing backdrop. What does your heart tell you? I finally asked. Olivia sighed, looking out over the water. Part of me wants to respond, to know more about her, maybe even try to build some connection. Another part remembers how she rejected me before, how she treated you. She trailed off, then added softly, I'm afraid. The fear is understandable, I acknowledged, but so is the curiosity. What would your parents advise? A small smile touched her lips. Mom would say everyone deserves a second chance, not necessarily in our lives, but at least to be heard. Dad would say to protect my heart, but not close it completely. Wise people, your parents. What about you? She asked, turning to face me directly. If she contacted you, would you respond? The question hung between us, weighted with history and pain. A year ago, my answer would have been an immediate and definitive no. But now, after everything I had experienced, after rediscovering family through Olivia and the Carters, after building something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal, I don't know, I answered honestly. I truly don't know. Olivia nodded, understanding. We don't have to decide tonight. We have time. We continued our walk in companionable silence, the question lingering unanswered, but not uncomfortably so. Some decisions couldn't be rushed. Some wounds needed time to heal enough before being tested. Later that night, after Olivia had gone home, I sat on my balcony watching stars appear above the ocean. The past year had brought transformations I never could have imagined. Pain beyond measure, yes, but also joy I hadn't believed possible again. The children's home would soon welcome its first residents. Olivia's research was saving lives. The foundation Gregory and I had dreamed of was becoming reality in ways far beyond our original vision. And at the center of it all was a simple truth. I was only now beginning to fully understand. Family wasn't defined by blood alone, or even primarily. It was defined by love, by choice, by showing up day after day for those who mattered. Lauren had broken that covenant, but in doing so, had inadvertently led me to a broader, richer understanding of what family could be. It wasn't a consolation for her betrayal. Nothing could fully heal that wound, but it was a gift nonetheless, one I was increasingly grateful to receive. The Gregory Davis Children's Home opened with a simple ceremony attended by local officials, foundation donors, and the first group of 12 children who would call it home. I stood at the podium beneath the yellow oak tree, looking out at faces filled with hope and possibility. This home, I told them, is more than just a building. It's a promise that every child deserves safety, education, opportunities, and most importantly, love. It's a place where pasts don't define futures, where second chances aren't just possible, but expected. As I spoke, I caught sight of Marcus Johnson standing at the back of the gathering. He'd taken personal leave to attend, and his presence was a reminder of how unexpected connections could change everything. After the ceremony, as the children explored their new home with wide-eyed wonder, I made my way through the crowd to greet him. "It's wonderful, Mrs. Davis," he said, surveying the facility with appreciation. "These kids don't know how lucky they are." "We are the lucky ones," I replied, "to be able to make a difference." Marcus nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind my words. His phone buzzed and he checked it with a grimace. "I have to get back to the office. Just wanted to see this come to fruition." "I'm glad you could be here," I said sincerely. "Without you, none of this might have happened." He waved off my gratitude with characteristic modesty. "You would have found another way." But we both knew the truth. His intervention that night had altered not just my life, but now the lives of countless children who would pass through these doors. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. The children settled into the home, staff worked out routines, and I divided my time between the foundation offices and visiting with the residents. Each child had a story. Each one affected me deeply, and I found myself increasingly involved in their daily lives, reading to the younger ones, helping with homework, attending school events. One evening, as I was leaving after dinner with the children, Rebecca called. "Can you come to the office?" she asked without preamble. "There's something you need to see." The urgency in her voice alarmed me. "Is everything all right?" A pause. "Just come, Nancy. It's important." When I arrived at the foundation offices downtown, Rebecca was waiting in the conference room with Richard Blackwell. Their serious expressions sent a chill through me. "What's happened?" I asked, setting down my purse. Richard placed a folder on the table. "Justin Clark returned to the States 3 weeks ago. He's been staying with his parents in Chicago." The news was unexpected, but not immediately alarming. The agreement was that they leave the country. If he's violated that— "There's more," Rebecca interrupted gently. "He came to Boston yesterday. He's asking to meet with you." I sat down heavily, the implications washing over me. "Why would he want that?" "He claims to have important information," Richard replied, his expression neutral. "Information you would want to know." "About what?" I demanded. What could he possibly have to say that I would want to hear? Rebecca and Richard exchanged glances. "About Lauren," Rebecca said finally, "and about what happened that night." My heart raced. "Is she all right? Has something happened to her?" "She's physically fine as far as we know," Richard assured me. "Still in Portugal working at the same hotel." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "So what does he want?" "He says he wants to clear his conscience," Rebecca explained. "He claims that night wasn't what we thought, that there's more to the story." "Of course he'd say that," I scoffed. "He's trying to manipulate his way back into my good graces, maybe get money." "That's possible," Richard acknowledged. "But my sources say he and Lauren divorced 6 months ago. He's working as a manager at his father's insurance company, living a modest life. No signs of extravagance or financial desperation." I leaned back, processing this information. "You think I should meet with him?" It wasn't a question, but Rebecca answered anyway. "I think you should hear what he has to say. With proper precautions, of course. Richard and I would be present. We'd meet in a neutral location with security if needed. And if it's just manipulation, more lies? Then you'll know, she said simply. And you can walk away with certainty. I stared at the folder, imagining Justin's face, remembering his cold calculation that night. When? Tomorrow afternoon, if you're willing. He's staying at the Westbridge Hotel downtown. The Westbridge? That's not cheap. His father's company is a corporate client, Richard explained. They get preferred rates. I took a deep breath. Decision made. Arrange it, but not at the hotel. Here, in this office, on our territory. The next day I arrived early, needing time to compose myself. I chose a simple gray suit, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back in a no-nonsense style. No signs of the wealth Justin had once coveted. Rebecca and Richard were already waiting when Justin arrived. He looked different than I remembered. Thinner, less polished. His designer suit replaced by off-the-rack business casual attire. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "Mrs. Davis," he greeted me, not offering his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "Sit down, Mr. Clark," I replied coolly. "You have 15 minutes to explain why you're violating our agreement by being in Boston." He nodded, accepting the constraint, and took the chair farthest from me. "I know you have no reason to believe anything I say. I wouldn't, in your position. But I need to tell you the truth about what happened. What really happened that night." "We know what happened," Rebecca interjected. "We have evidence. A witness. Your own confession." "You have part of the truth," Justin countered, his voice steady. "But not all of it." He looked directly at me. "I was the one who put the propranolol in your drink, Mrs. Davis, not Lauren." The statement hung in the air, unexpected and jarring. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. "The waiter saw Lauren do it." Justin shook his head. "He saw what he thought he saw. Lauren had the vial, yes. She was holding it. But I was the one who put the powder in your drink when she handed it to me. It was my plan, my execution. Lauren was—" He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "She was manipulated by me." Richard leaned forward, skeptical. "Why would you admit this now? It only makes you more culpable." "Because it's the truth," Justin replied simply. "And because Lauren doesn't deserve to carry this alone." "She signed the confession," I pointed out, my voice hard. "She admitted it was her idea." "Because I convinced her it was," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Mrs. Davis, Lauren has been suffering from untreated bipolar disorder for years. The severe kind, with episodes that cloud judgment, distort reality. I recognized it early in our relationship. The mood swings, the grandiose spending, the periods of crushing depression. But instead of helping her get treatment, I exploited it. I felt as if the room were tilting sideways. Bipolar disorder? That's convenient. It's documented, Justin countered. She was diagnosed in college but refused medication. After we separated, she finally sought help. Her doctor in Portugal confirmed the diagnosis. I have the records if you want to see them. He reached for his briefcase. "Why should we believe anything you say?" Rebecca demanded. "You tried to kill Nancy." "Yes," Justin agreed, no evasion in his voice. "I did. I was drowning in debt, desperate, and saw an opportunity. Lauren was in a manic phase, spending money we didn't have, convinced everything would work out. When you mentioned the foundation, Mrs. Davis, I saw my chance slipping away. I convinced Lauren you were abandoning her again, that you cared more about strangers than your own daughter." In her unstable state, she believed it. "So you manipulated my mentally ill daughter into helping poison me," I stated flatly. "That's your defense? That doesn't make you less guilty. It makes you worse." "It's not a defense," he replied, his voice catching. "There is no defense for what I did. I'm here because Lauren deserves better than exile and shame for something that was fundamentally my doing. She was sick, Mrs. Davis. She needed help, not punishment." I studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "Why tell me this now? Why not a year ago?" "Because a year ago I was still the man who would do anything to protect himself. It's taken time, therapy, medication for my own issues, working an actual job instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes, to understand what I did." He paused. "And because Lauren is struggling, really struggling. The isolation, the shame, it's crushing her, even with treatment." "Where is she now?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Still in Lisbon, working at the Hotel Marquis as a receptionist, living in a small apartment near the coast." He hesitated. "She doesn't know I'm here. If she did, she'd probably try to stop me. She believes she deserves her punishment." The room fell silent as I absorbed his words. Could it be true? Had Lauren been ill rather than merely cruel? Had I failed to see signs of mental illness in my own child? "I need proof," I finally said. "Not just your word." Justin nodded as if he'd expected this. He opened his briefcase and removed a manila envelope, which he slid across the table. "Medical records with Lauren's permission, a letter from her current psychiatrist, and—" He paused, removing a smaller envelope. "A letter from Lauren herself. Not to you. She didn't know I was coming here. It's a letter she wrote to me when we divorced. I think it might help you understand." I took both envelopes but didn't open them immediately. Why should I believe any of this? "You shouldn't, not without verification," he answered honestly. "Have your own experts review the records. Contact the doctor directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mrs. Davis. I don't deserve it. I'm only asking that you consider the possibility that Lauren deserves a second chance. Not with me, but with life. With possibility." Richard cleared his throat. "What exactly are you hoping will happen here, Clark? The agreement stays in place. You violated it by returning." "I know," Justin acknowledged. "I'm prepared to face consequences for that. But Lauren shouldn't suffer for my actions." "Not anymore." I finally opened the larger envelope, skimming the medical records. They appeared legitimate. Detailed psychiatric evaluations, medication lists, therapy notes. If they were forgeries, they were exceptionally well crafted. "I'll need time to review these," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "And to consider what you've said." Justin nodded, standing. "That's all I can ask. Thank you for listening, Mrs. Davis." He reached into his pocket and placed a business card on the table. "My current contact information, if you have questions or if you make a decision about Lauren." After he left, the three of us sat in stunned silence. Could he be telling the truth? I finally asked. Richard shrugged. Possible. The medical records look authentic, but we should verify independently. "And if they are?" Rebecca asked. "If Lauren truly is bipolar, if Justin manipulated her condition—" I stared at the smaller envelope, not yet ready to read Lauren's letter. "Then I failed her twice, once by not recognizing her illness, and again by exiling her without understanding." "You couldn't have known," Rebecca insisted. "Nancy, even if this is true, you responded to the information you had at the time. No one could blame you for that." But I blamed myself. If Lauren had been suffering from mental illness since adolescence, how had I missed it? The mood swings, the impulsive spending, the periods of withdrawal. Had I been so focused on the business that I'd failed to see my daughter's suffering? "I need to think," I said, gathering the envelopes. "Alone." At home that evening, I finally opened Lauren's letter to Justin. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, though less controlled than I remembered. the script flowing across the page in uneven bursts. Justin, I've started and stopped this letter a dozen times. The doctors say writing helps organize thoughts, but mine still feel like birds scattering in different directions. I remember so little of that night clearly. Fragments, like a broken mirror. Mom's face when she mentioned the foundation. Your whispers in the car afterward. The small vial in my hand. I remember feelings more than facts. The absolute certainty that we were being abandoned, that $30 million going to strangers was proof Mom never really loved me. Now, with medication, with distance, I see how distorted my thinking was. How convenient my illness was for your plans. You knew exactly when to suggest things, always during my highs, when everything seemed possible and consequences felt distant and unreal. I'm not writing to absolve myself. What I did, what we did, was monstrous, regardless of my mental state. I will carry that shame forever. But I need you to acknowledge your role. You saw my illness as a tool. You used me when I was most vulnerable. The doctors say I likely developed bipolar disorder after Dad died. That trauma at that age can trigger the condition in those genetically predisposed. All those years, I wasn't just difficult or selfish. I was sick, and you knew it. I wonder sometimes if Mom would have recognized it if she hadn't been so consumed with the business. If she'd seen the signs earlier, maybe everything would be different. But that's not fair to her. She did the best she could with what she knew. I hope someday to find peace with myself. I doubt I'll ever find reconciliation with her. Some betrayals can't be undone. Lauren, I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. The raw honesty of it, the absence of excuses while still acknowledging illness. It felt authentic in a way that Justin's practiced explanation hadn't. My phone rang, startling me. It was Olivia. "Grandma? Are you all right?" Rebecca called me about Justin. I took a shaky breath. "I'm processing. It's complicated. Do you want me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. No, dear. I need time alone with this. But thank you." I hesitated, then asked, "Olivia, as a doctor, is it possible I could have missed signs of bipolar disorder in Lauren?" There was a thoughtful pause before she answered. "Absolutely, especially if it began in adolescence, when mood swings are already expected. Without medical training, and if she was high-functioning between episodes, it would be easy to attribute symptoms to personality or circumstances, rather than illness." Her words offered a small measure of comfort. "I keep thinking I should have known. I'm her mother." "Grandma," Olivia said gently, "mental illness is complex and often invisible. Many families miss the signs until a crisis occurs. It doesn't mean you failed her." After we hung up, I sat with Lauren's letter, Justin's revelations, and my own tumultuous emotions. If what they claimed was true, I had to reconsider everything I thought I knew about that night, about Lauren herself. But verification needed to come first. I called Richard Blackwell. "I need you to confirm these medical records," I instructed. "And I want more information about Lauren's current situation in Portugal. Her living conditions, her treatment, everything." "I'll put my best people on it," he promised. "But Nancy, whatever we find, what are you planning to do?" It was the question I'd been avoiding since Justin's visit. What would I do if Lauren was truly ill? If her betrayal had been influenced by untreated mental illness and Justin's manipulation? "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I need the truth before I can decide." That night, sleep eluded me. I paced my house, memories of Lauren flooding back, not just the betrayal, but earlier times. The summer she turned 16 and barely left her room for weeks. The spending sprees followed by periods of extreme frugality. The times she would call at 3 a.m., talking so fast I could barely follow her thoughts. Had those been symptoms I'd misinterpreted? Had I been too busy building seaside retreats to notice my daughter unraveling? By morning, I had reached only one certainty. I needed more information before making any decisions. The past couldn't be changed, but the future remained unwritten. And somewhere in Portugal, my daughter was living with the consequences of actions that might have been influenced by factors beyond her full control. Richard's investigation moved with impressive efficiency. Within a week, he had verified Lauren's medical records with her doctors in Portugal, compiled a detailed report on her current living situation, and even obtained surveillance photos showing her daily routine. The picture that emerged was sobering. Lauren lived in a small studio apartment in a working-class neighborhood of Lisbon. She worked 6 days a week at the Hotel Marquis, taking the bus to and from work. She attended twice-weekly therapy sessions and a bipolar support group on Sundays. Her life was modest, structured, and from all appearances, lonely. "She's following her treatment plan diligently," Richard reported, showing me her pharmacy records. Mood stabilizers, antidepressants, regular blood work to monitor levels. Her doctor reports significant improvement over the past 6 months. I studied the surveillance photos with mixed emotions. Lauren looked different. Thinner, less polished. Her designer clothes replaced by simple, practical attire. Her expression in candid shots was serious, focused, lacking the brittle glitter I remembered. "And financially?" I asked. "Living paycheck to paycheck," Richard confirmed. "The hotel job pays modestly. Her apartment rent consumes about 40% of her income. No luxury purchases, no travel except to medical appointments. She's taking a night class in Portuguese twice a week." "Any contact with Justin?" "None that we could detect. Not since the divorce was finalized." I nodded, absorbing this information. "And your professional assessment, Richard, as someone who's investigated countless people?" He considered carefully before answering. "Based on all available evidence, I believe she is genuinely in recovery, both from mental illness and from the person she was. The pattern is consistent with someone rebuilding their life from the ground up, not someone waiting for a second chance at wealth or privilege." Rebecca, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. "The question remains, Nancy. What do you want to do with this information?" It was the heart of the matter. What did I want? Reconciliation? Closure? To maintain the separation, but with a clearer understanding of what had happened? I genuinely didn't know. I need to speak with Olivia first, I decided. This affects her, too. Later that evening, Olivia came for dinner. I shared everything we had learned, watching her face carefully as she processed the information. "I suspected something like this," she admitted, surprising me. "When I met her last year, it was brief, but there was something about her affect, her speech patterns. As a doctor, I'm trained to notice certain indicators. She seemed fragmented somehow." "Why didn't you mention this before?" She shrugged slightly. "It was just an impression, not a diagnosis. And after she rejected me so completely, it didn't seem relevant." I hesitated before asking the next question. "She's reached out to you recently. If this is true, if she was ill and manipulated, does that change how you feel about responding?" Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "It explains things, but doesn't erase them. Mental illness can help us understand behavior, but doesn't necessarily excuse its impact." She looked up, her expression thoughtful. "But yes, it does change things. It opens possibilities I hadn't considered." "Such as?" "Such as cautious communication. Not diving into a mother-daughter relationship, but perhaps starting a correspondence. Learning who she is now, rather than who she was then." Her measured approach reassured me. Olivia wasn't rushing to embrace or reject Lauren. She was considering all aspects with the same careful analysis she brought to her research. And what about you, Grandma? Are you thinking of contacting her? The question hung between us, weighted with history and pain. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to understand, to see for myself if she's changed. Another part fears reopening wounds that have finally begun to heal. Olivia nodded understanding. There's no rush to decide. And whatever you choose, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You could start with a letter or an email, maintain distance while opening communication. We talked late into the evening, exploring options and implications. By the time Olivia left, I had reached no firm decision, but felt clearer about the possibilities before me. The next morning, Rebecca called with alarming news. "Lauren's in the hospital," she said without preamble. "She collapsed at work yesterday. Richard's contact just informed him." My heart raced. What happened? Is she all right? "It's not life-threatening," Rebecca assured me quickly. "Exhaustion, dehydration, and apparently she'd missed several doses of her medication due to working double shifts. She's stable but being kept for observation." "Which hospital?" "São José Hospital in central Lisbon." "Nancy, what are you thinking?" I took a deep breath, decision crystallizing with unexpected clarity. "I'm going to Portugal." There was a brief silence before Rebecca responded. "Are you sure that's wise? After everything?" "No," I admitted. "But I need to see her, to understand. If she's truly ill, if Justin manipulated her condition, I need to know for myself. Do you want me to come with you?" The offer touched me deeply. "No, but thank you. This is something I need to do alone." I paused. "Well, not entirely alone. I'm going to ask Olivia to join me if she's willing. She has medical knowledge I lack, and this concerns her too." "When will you leave?" "Today, if possible. Can you arrange it?" Within hours, Rebecca had organized everything. First-class tickets to Lisbon, a suite at a hotel near the hospital, and a local guide/translator to assist us. Olivia, after consulting with her research team, agreed to take a week away. By evening, we were on a transatlantic flight, both of us quiet with anticipation and apprehension. "Are you nervous?" Olivia asked as the plane reached cruising altitude. "Terrified," I admitted. "I haven't seen her in over a year, not since that day in Rebecca's office when she signed the agreement. I don't know what to expect." "Nor do I," Olivia confessed. "My only interaction with her was being rejected. I have no idea how she'll react to seeing either of us." "We could be making a terrible mistake," I mused, staring out the window at the darkness beyond. Olivia took my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "Or we could be taking the first step toward healing something broken. Either way, we're doing it together." The simple statement brought unexpected comfort. Whatever awaited us in Lisbon, I would not face it alone. We arrived early the next morning, checked into our hotel to freshen up, then headed directly to the hospital. The white stone building with its blue-tiled entrance was busy with staff and visitors, the atmosphere both foreign and familiar. Hospitals, it seemed, had their own universal language of hushed voices and purposeful movement. With our translator's help, we located Lauren's room on the 3rd floor. A nurse informed us that she was awake but weak and cautioned against a lengthy visit. I nodded understanding, my heart pounding as we approached the door. "Ready?" Olivia asked softly. I took a steadying breath. "As I'll ever be." I knocked gently, then pushed the door open. The room was small but private, sunlight streaming through half-drawn blinds. Lauren lay in the narrow bed, an IV attached to her arm, her face turned toward the window. She looked so much thinner than I remembered, her once glossy hair dull and pulled back in a simple ponytail. When she turned toward the door, her eyes widened in shock. "Mom?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Is that really you?" "Hello, Lauren," I said, moving into the room with Olivia beside me. Lauren's gaze shifted to Olivia, confusion giving way to recognition. And, Olivia, how? Why are you both here? We heard you were in the hospital, I explained, approaching the bed cautiously. We were concerned. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. You came all this way because I fainted at work? After everything I did? Justin came to see me, I said gently, taking a seat beside the bed. He told me about your diagnosis, about his manipulation. We've verified the medical records, spoken with your doctors. Lauren closed her eyes, a tear escaping down her cheek. He had no right. That wasn't his story to tell. Perhaps not, I acknowledged, but I'm glad he did. It helps me understand what happened. She opened her eyes, searching my face. Understand, but not forgive. I wouldn't expect that. I don't deserve it. I'm not here to talk about forgiveness yet, I said truthfully. I'm here because you're ill, and you're my daughter, and I needed to see you. Lauren turned her attention to Olivia, who had remained silent. And you? Why would you come after I turned you away? Olivia stepped forward, her professional demeanor softening. Because I'm a doctor, and because despite everything we're connected. I wanted to understand too. A nurse entered with medication, momentarily interrupting the charged exchange. After she left, Lauren seemed more composed, though visibly exhausted. The doctors say I'll be released tomorrow, she said, her voice stronger. It was just exhaustion and dehydration. I've been working double shifts to save for a better apartment. We'd like to talk with you properly when you're feeling stronger, I said. We're staying for a week. Lauren looked genuinely perplexed. What is there to say? What could possibly fix what happened? Nothing fixes it, I replied honestly. But perhaps we can understand it better. Perhaps we can find a way forward that acknowledges the past without being imprisoned by it. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, when I'm discharged, we can talk. As we prepared to leave, allowing her to rest, Lauren called me back. Mom? I turned at the door. Yes? Why now? She asked, vulnerability evident in her voice. After all this time? I considered my answer carefully, because I needed to know if the daughter I raised still exists somewhere beneath the person who sat in that office a year ago. I think perhaps she does. Outside the hospital, Olivia and I walked in silence for several blocks, processing the encounter. She seems genuinely changed, Olivia finally observed. More present, somehow. I nodded agreement. The brittleness is gone, the calculation. I sighed deeply. I don't know what happens next, Olivia. This is uncharted territory for all of us. We take it one conversation at a time, she replied sensibly, without expectations, without promises, just truth, whatever that looks like. The wisdom in her approach struck me once again. This remarkable young woman, born of such complicated circumstances, possessed a clarity and compassion that continued to amaze me. How did you get so wise? I asked, only half joking. She smiled, linking her arm through mine as we walked. Good genes, excellent upbringing, and enough life experience to know that nothing is ever as simple as it first appears. In that moment, despite the uncertainty ahead, I felt a profound gratitude. Whatever came of our meetings with Lauren, I had found in Olivia a connection that transcended the pain of the past. And perhaps that was the most important discovery of all. Does healing always require forgiveness, or is understanding sometimes enough? Have you ever had to reconsider someone's actions in light of new information? Share your thoughts in the comments.